Welcome to the Well-Seasoned Librarian podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. This is Season 15, Episode 14. Today I'm speaking with singer, media personality Sandra Lau, who was born in Mexico City and was raised in Sydney, Australia. Sandra has worked as a professional vocalist for the past 24 years, accompanying numerous Latin American artists including Juan Gabriel, Emmanuel, and Armando Manzanero, and has also performed as a solo artist. In 2019, Sandra decided to pursue her passion for gastronomy and travel by starting a YouTube channel in which she produces content focused mainly on Mexican cuisine and culinary customs. Sandra also has a YouTube channel about mental health and mental illness. I love talking with my guests, and talking with Sandra was like talking to an old friend. I really enjoyed our conversation. I'm now going to take you to my conversation with Sandra Lau. Welcome to the podcast. I want to welcome vocalist, social media star, Sandra Lau. Sandra, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
For those who are not familiar with your work, can you tell us where in the world you're from and where you're talking to us from now?
Right. I am Mexican Chinese. I was born in Mexico City, but raised in Sydney, Australia. And right now I'm in Mexico City, and it's where I've been based for the last 22 years.
You've had an impressive career as a vocalist. I want to mention that as well. We talked about that in the intro. Working with renowned Latin American artists, can you share any memorable experiences or anecdotes from your time performing with any of these musicians?
Right. Well, one of the artists that comes to mind right away is Juan Gabriel, who was the biggest Mexican and Latin American artist. I toured with him intensely for 4 years. So I think one of the most memorable experiences would be recording the DVD, which is like everywhere I go, it's played nonstop. So, we recorded that 11 years ago, and it was quite stressful. I mean, it's unforgettable because of the level of stress, but also now when I look back, I think I was part of something quite special. But doing a lot of amazing venues like Madison Square Garden with these artists. And this year I was able to do background vocals for Emmanuel, who's another huge Mexican artist. And he's doing he's in post-production now for a symphonic album with all of his greatest hits. So that's also an amazing experience.
Did you always want to be a singer when you were younger? Was that your dream? Is that kind of what the career path was for you all along?
Absolutely. I discovered I could sing when I was 9. So that was a pretty great moment that hasn't ever escaped me, just because of the way that I felt when I discovered that I could sing, that I actually sang in tune, and there was just this passion that woke inside of me, and I always wanted to sing. Absolutely.
How has your cultural background influenced your musical style and career path? You've gone from Australia to Mexico. How has that been for you as far as your singing goes and like the different types of singing you do?
Right. I have to say that I'm probably more influenced by English pop and what's on the radio. It's what I grew up listening to, like all of the top of the charts music. So that is my most the biggest influence actually for me, pop. When I moved here, I mean, I didn't realize I was moving to Mexico. I was just going to be here for 4 months.
Yeah.
And the music, the regional music of this country, it's so rich, but it's very complex for me because I didn't grow up listening to it. And it's beautiful music. It's quite challenging when you don't come from that background. And that was a challenge that I had when I worked with Juan Gabriel, which was, he did a lot of music with mariachi, and the phrasing and the times, the internal structure of the songs. It was quite challenging for me. And also bearing in mind that, I didn't speak Spanish until I was 22. So even singing in Spanish was like quite a tongue twister for me. So it's all been quite a huge challenge. I'm absolutely fluent now in Spanish, but back then it was quite hard.
I was going to say you speak. I think you speak Spanish better than some natives I know. You handle like I grew up next to the border, so I grew up hearing Spanish. You speak it quite well. Was that a challenge for you, or do you have a natural knack for languages?
It was so hard. It was hard. I was thrust into like, living in Mexico and having to speak Spanish any way you could, which is usually not the best way because you think in terms of like a native English speaker, and then you translate that. And really, when you speak another language, you're adapting to the other language. And so it was so hard. I think it took me about 8 to 10 years to really be able to express myself. And one of the advantages I had at the beginning, I lived with an aunt for 4 years, and she corrected my Spanish. Like, she was on top of me.
Oh, that's
Um,
lucky.
I was very fortunate, and I'm dedicated. Like, I read a lot. I don't want to come off like a person that's uneducated, in the sense that, you have to know grammar. I mean, 22
Yeah.
years later, it's important to read and to dedicate a bit of time to that, so that you don't look like a fool, so
Yeah.
you're not actually writing um not knowing what's going on. I think now that I live in Mexico, that's the very least I could do, to up my Spanish in terms of how I speak and write it. Yeah, but it's incredibly challenging
What
speaking
inspired?
another language. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to learn Spanish right now, and I'm having a hell of a time with it, and it's very difficult for me. But it's something I want to do. But I'm impressed. I mean, you always speak it so beautifully. Make it sound very beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. I think it's also because, I've lived here for 22 years. That's the advantage. When you live in your environment forces you to speak that language, then, you'll fast track yourself. But I'm also, because I'm a singer, like, I'm very, um, I always rely on my ear for a lot of things. So, with Spanish, with learning this language, that was definitely an advantage I had. But you have to, study every day. You have to apply yourself every day. And, because we're neighboring countries, I think it's also important that we be bilingual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, that's something I'm hoping people will eventually realize more here in America. It's something I think a lot of people are reluctant to embrace, but for me, I think it's exceedingly important to be at least bilingual because, it's ridiculous too for me, especially since so many of our place names are Spanish and we have a traditional history, especially in California here, with a lot of history from Mexico. And, I think we kind of neglect that, unfortunately. And I think that's something I think we need to embrace, actually.
I absolutely agree with you. And it's something that I talk to my friends all the time. I mean, we travel to the States quite a bit, touring, and I'm one of two people that is bilingual. And the rest of my friends are like, "Hey, Sandy, can you help me out?" And I of course will help out my bandmates, but I always stress the importance of being bilingual because of the geography. It's like, if you think of Europe, when I was in Europe, everyone I spoke to, they spoke at least four languages,
Yes.
because the geography forces them to do that. And I think that if we applied that over here, it would be amazing, and so many doors open to you, being bilingual. Uh, I really hope that changes too.
Yeah, absolutely. What inspired you in your transition from a successful music career to creating YouTube content? And you have more than one type if you'd like to talk about that. I know you largely from the content that I've seen on Instagram, talking about authentic Mexican cuisine, but you also have a YouTube channel on mental health. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure, sure. I haven't transitioned yet because my actual job is, I'm a vocalist. So, these other two projects that I have, which is Chinita Food and Travel, and I Hear You, Children of Schizophrenics, is really, uh, those projects are really well, Chinita is my passion project, and I Hear You is more of a social, uh, contribution project that is very close to my heart, and that I would really love as a legacy more than anything. Because, just to give you a bit of context, I'm the daughter of a schizophrenic mother. And so when I grew up in that situation, it was incredibly difficult. Basically, at the age of 8, I became my mum's mum. And so what that entails is just, it's a very difficult life, and the impact that it has on you. And to this day, I'm 44 now. The impact is you continue to live it. So when I created that channel, really, I think deep down I was trying to create a resource that I wish I could have had when I was a teenager or a young adult. That's really, it's kind of like I'm attending to my younger self, creating these resources. But what has happened along the way is that I've met other children of schizophrenic parents who have experienced the same thing, and it's just validating being able to talk about that life without feeling embarrassment and without feeling like it's you have to keep it all to yourself, which I did when I was a kid, So so that's a project that's very close to my heart. Chinitia Food and Travel is my passion project. I've been a foodie my whole life. My father was born in Macau, so my Chinese family, and this is a very daring statement, but I think they are bigger foodies than my Mexican family, and that says a lot. Yeah, that says a lot. That says a lot. So, but, I'd wanted to start this this kind of journey since 2011 and 12. And I never really got the nerve up to until I met a huge food blogger that I love, Mike Chen. He's huge on YouTube. In 2019, I got the nerve up to start my YouTube channel. And I went in pretty strong, like for a year and a half. But as you know, as a content creator, we're the ones that are scouting for the content and producing it and editing and uploading, and you're the everything man. So it's hard work. And so after the year and a half, I was a bit inconsistent with it. And then at the beginning of this year, I was feeling quite frustrated, and I thought, okay, in May, I decided to upload one video a day for the rest of the year and see what would happen.
Wow, that's a lot.
Oh my God, it is.
Yeah, that's a lot. I don't know how you do that.
I sometimes don't know, because I actually have a job. I mean, now I say I have 2 jobs, which is Chinitia and my vocal career. But when I'm on tour, sometimes I'm just like, oh my God. And because, I rely on my voice for my actual job. Sometimes I've done my voiceovers with the most hoarse voice, and it just sounds like a dragon saying Mexican food you've never heard before. But I'm like, I'm a machine. I've got to do this. I committed to this. And if I don't do this, I'm failing myself, So the result has been pretty amazing, because I started with about 562 followers, and I'm at almost 15,000 now in 7 months, organically. It's been hard work.
Oh yeah, I can attest to that, and I just I do a tenth of maybe what you do, and that sounds really hard. I mean, that's pretty dedicated. Now, your social media platforms, you kind of have a similarity, even though they're very different. On both levels, it seems like you're educating people about things. And I was really initially just so happy to see somebody educating people on Mexican food, because I don't know as much as you or a lot of people on Mexican food, but I'm learning, and I read people like Diana Kennedy, and I love learning about the varieties of Mexican food and how little we know in America, because we've Taco Belled everything, to death. And it's really, everybody thinks of it as with globs of cheese on it, blah, blah, blah. And it's just really not touching the reality of Mexican cuisine. I love that. And schizophrenia is a topic that is dear to my heart. I've worked with a lot of people in libraries and hospitals that struggle with that. And I've talked to them candidly, and it's something that's very harrowing. And in our media and TV and movies, we often have a very negative portrayal of schizophrenia, very maybe not even talking about the humanity of the people, almost a cartoonish portrayal. And it's something that I'm really happy that somebody's talking about it, and also how the family deals with it as well. Can you talk about both of these projects and how you started with them, and what you want to do with these as far as educating the public about these topics?
Right. With Chinita food, it's really um, letting people know that Mexican food isn't just tacos and the
Yeah.
Tex-Mex stuff that you get in the States, and it's not beer and, Corona beer. The variety, the diversity of food in this country is just phenomenal. That's why it's intangible heritage. It's been recognized by UNESCO for humanity. It's just, you know, when I decided to post videos every day, it came to me, okay, I'm gonna do a segment called Mexican Food You've Never Heard of. At
Right.
this point, I've done so many videos. I think I've done about 200 videos, but I've had family members and friends from here say to me, I've never heard of that, and we're Mexican. So for me, it's amazing. Like, I feel like, I give myself a pat on the back when my fellow Mexicans say, hey, I'd never heard of that. Because within this country, I mean, if you consider that there are 32 states, each state has their own gastronomy and their own ingredients and their own methods, right? And so the diversity is just amazing to me. One of the things that makes my approach different and I think unique is the fact that though I was born in Mexico, because I moved to Sydney when I was 4 years old, and when I came back, though I recognized my Mexican blood, I have recognized it my whole life. When I came back as a foreigner. And so everything for me was just wonderful, the food, the people, the culture, the traditions, the language, and the food. Everything that we do in Mexico revolves around food. And so what I really aim to do with all of my social media now is to just showcase the wonderful diversity in Mexican gastronomy and honor the people. It's just a lot of people. I've been working with a restaurant that's worth mentioning. It's called Fogones MX, and the owners have traveled to the 32 states. They wrote a book. They interviewed traditional cooks from every state. And one of the things that keeps repeating is that there are a lot of foreigners that are coming to this country, interviewing these cooks who have inherited methods and recipes from their grandmothers, their great-grandmothers, ancestral recipes. And, these people come in and they record everything and they document everything. And then they say, oh, this is our recipe. And they don't give credit
Ah,
to these wonderful people who, when they share their stories, it really touches me. You know, this restaurant brings these cooks and gives them the microphone and allows them, if they feel comfortable, allows them to tell part of their stories. And I remember this one man, his name is Eloy, and he said, I was taught how to cook by my family, like my mom and my grandmother, but I was beaten. I was hit, so that he was obligated to do that, but it was quite violent, his process. And the things that he cooks, it's amazing. And they've had recognition, national recognition in terms of their gastronomic input. And it's just really quite tragic the way that, other people come in and just hijack all of that information and make it their own. And, it's just that makes me mad, and more than anything, yeah, it's really promoting the wonderful richness that Mexico offers to the world gastronomically.
it's kind of almost a culinary plagiarism. I mean, if you were a academic doing that, they would cry foul. But People who write cooking cookbooks and stuff feel no remorse about just adapting things and taking it for themselves.
Exactly. And then what that means for that community, you've brought in that community who has opened the doors to their home and shared something so special and really sacred. We're talking about traditions, rituals that they have, and other people come along and just have no respect. It just really the whole time. Uh, the buttering up of these people has been for their gain. And I think that's why Fogón is this restaurant that gives them the recognition and gives them their place, in terms of, hey, these are the ladies that we have learned from. These are the men that we have learned from, and please share all of this and give them a round of applause. And for them, it really goes to their heart, and I think it's well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your other content as well?
Right. With I Hear You, Children of Schizophrenics, and it's interesting that you mentioned, you said it's harrowing, and it is. It's when you grow up with a family member with such a difficult illness. Schizophrenia is considered probably the most complex and difficult mental illness. And just the things that you live through on a daily basis, it's so challenging, especially, because I grew up with it. I feel like I did miss out on a lot of things in terms of, having that maternal guidance. And it's something that I still have to work on. And it's something that is mentioned with the people that I interview on the channel about the maternal longing, that even if you're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, it's still something that is incomplete in your heart because you never had that. So really, really what I'm doing with I Hear You, it's creating a space, creating a community where other people who have lived through this situation can talk honestly about it, and not feel ashamed of that part of your story, because that's part of your history. And I know for me, and it's something that just keeps coming up over and over, which was living with shame and living with thinking you have to keep it from everyone. And that's a burden in itself,
Yeah. Yeah.
And the struggles, most of the resources are channeled toward the patient, which is fabulous. But really what I'm getting to with this channel is the secondary victims of this mental illness also need to be assisted. That is the whole point of the content. They, we're people who, have kind of been put to the side because the eminent need is to attend to the patient. And then, like, you have children, or you have a spouse, or you have a mother. Everyone's going through a difficult process, and everyone needs the support, but it's really not available.
No, I found, and from a side observation of somebody who's not gone through it, but watched other people go through it and watched other families go through it, the one thing I notice, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but oftentimes what'll happen is the family will compartmentalize that family and then the children and the person who's suffering through that will not have the support of a family. Unlike other things, like, if they're dealing with any other kind of illness, they may have support, but with this, they kind of basically get ostracized or kind of like, compartmentalized out. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That is correct. And it's because it's so intense and difficult living with a mentally ill patient, even the circle, like the immediate family, a lot of family members will leave. They'll go no contact because it's such a hard illness to deal with. And then friends will leave, and then you also isolate. So if you had any friends, I mean, I've talked about this. I have two best friends in Sydney. One did know that that was happening when we were in high school. My other best friend didn't know. And so she came over one day. We were 19 and my mum kicked her out. And so I walked her to the bus stop and I cried all the way to the bus. And I just said, you know what, I'm so sorry. I never told you before, but my mum has schizophrenia. And I cried and cried. And she said, Sandra, you should have told me. You should have told me. And so I had isolated myself as well.
Yeah.
So I just lived with such shame because I was like, why couldn't I be normal? Why, and then everything is magnified because you look at your friends and their parents and then, I mean, no family is perfect. But when you're coming from a situation of such chaos, you look at any other family and think, oh, they must be fine and dandy. But
Right.
but that's also creating so much turmoil and heartache in your own mind because you're thinking, oh, well, everybody's perfect except me. But yeah, it is an isolating illness.
What are some of the biggest challenges you have with building your YouTube audience and then creating new content, but also juggling that with a probably pretty demanding career?
Gosh, that I think, well, it just takes so long there's so much work that goes into it and really not a lot of like growth that comes fast. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I know that everyone wants it fast, the growing and monetizing of your content. Wait, can you, let's do this again. Can you ask me the question again? I lost my.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's totally okay. Yeah, and anytime you need to do this, just let me know. How do you balance your passion? Okay, sorry, let me do it again.
No worries.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you face building your YouTube audience and creating engaging content, but also balancing that with what must be a pretty demanding career doing vocal work?
Right. It is challenging balancing everything. Sometimes I just feel like especially when I'm really full on with singing, I'm just like, oh my God, why did I decide to do all of these things? But I think it's important to be organized so that you can cover all of the daily goals that you have. One of the challenges in terms of, I think, I don't know if it's a challenge or more like a disappointment at how slowly you create a community. That's one of the things that is quite hard to wrap your head around because there's so much work. You're a content creator. What goes into all of the projects that you do and everything that you upload. And then you'll get quite a small response back. And that's disheartening sometimes. I think the challenge with growing the community more than anything is with myself and trying to, not have any expectations. And, I want this to take off. I remember somebody put years ago that Chinita, I can't wait for your content to blow up, and then I had YouTube all over me saying, oh, this is a comment that's like terrorist, related.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so then that got taken down. And I think more than anything, it's me, my, sometimes I just want to run and I feel like, I feel like things should be happening and they're not. And so sometimes my own thoughts are what makes this a little more difficult because I can't really control the growth of all of my social platforms. I've done very few times, like I've paid for like some promotional campaign and it kind of works and it doesn't at the same time. But also I know that only with organic engagement and organic growth can you really sustain something over, like really create a community, which is what we want to do. You want people to identify with you and say, yeah, I want Chinita to tell me about all of the Mexican food. She's my go-to, right? And so that takes time. And I tell my nephews, they're like my biggest fans, and they're like, hey, you've got like this video, but it's just an example. I uploaded a video, thought nothing of it. It's called encacahuatado, this wonderful mole dish, and the star ingredient are peanuts. And
I remember that one.
Yeah, I remember I got so many, like all of a sudden I just started getting followers and followers and comments, and it was, oh, this dish is African. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm sorry. And there are dishes that are similar, like in, Thai curries or whatever. And that just started going nuts. It has like 600 comments of people
Oh, wow.
about it. And my nephews are like, oh, that's fantastic, because it's controversial and those videos are great, but you never know which one is going to be the one that's going to, kind of take off more. That's the frustrating part, because how does the algorithm work? I don't know.
It's such a punishing when you do anything in social media, be it a podcast or a YouTube vlog or even a blog, you do so much work that when you don't get the immediate numbers, you feel bad, like you're failing. But so much, I mean, because I teach classes in podcasting and I tell people, you may not immediately get large numbers. It may take a while. And I cite sources like, Howard Stern took forever before he got famous. Mark Maron did it for 10 years or more before he got famous. I mean, a lot of people have to put in the work for a long time before they gather an audience. It's just, and then some people do it 2 days and they're famous. And you're just like, what the hell?
Yeah. And I was like, I want to be that person, I'll do it for a year. I've been doing it since 2019. I'm like,
yeah,
come on.
yeah, come on. Where's the luck going to hit me?
Yeah. Like you said, you feel it's a little punishing for like the amount of dedication that goes into this. But there is a thing called passion, and that's what gives you drive. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to sustain a project over 6 years, or be able to take the kind of workload that I, imposed on myself, which is uploading on a daily basis. If there's no passion, you can't sustain that.
You talked a little bit earlier about the regional differences in Mexican cuisine, and I mentioned, of course, we've kind of Taco Belled everything to death here, so that people have a really wrong-headed version of Mexican cuisine, but which I think is changing, at least in the Bay Area anyway. I don't know about like the Midwest, but like here, I think we're starting to see differences in the way it's portrayed. I think in restaurants, and chefs are coming in that are working on doing authentic cuisine for different regions. And we're seeing regional cuisine mentioned a lot of times. People like, what kind of cuisine is this? It's Oaxacan food, and so then they, talk about the distinctions there. So that's nice. But when you started your projects and started talking about Mexican food, what were people's perceptions of it early on? Did you really surprise people? And I think a lot of people probably have no idea. And you mentioned ingredients and things that people might have not have considered before. And you don't just cover main dishes, you cover different beverages and desserts and things like that. You kind of cover the whole gamut. So basically, what were some of the things that you initially wanted to convey, and how has that changed over the last few years that you've done the social media platform on the Mexican food?
Right. In the beginning, I would travel and record food and just share like what I ate on a trip. And now it's focused on the Mexican food that you really have never heard of, the dishes. And it can be like really complex dishes like moles and dishes that take hours to prepare. And I also cover street food, and I cover everything.
Yeah.
So I think with all of these videos, really it was to change the perception of this Tex-Mex food that's available. But sorry, what was your question? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It was a really long question. I'll kind of re-ask it because it's like I kind of threw you like 5 questions in one. But yeah, basically, I'm going to start again. Could you share some of the things you initially thought about when you started your channel, and how has that changed since you began it? I know that you've been really trying to educate people on what really is the cuisine of Mexico. So what did you do initially when you started, and how has that changed over time?
Right. In the beginning, I would travel and record the food that I was, tasting in different states. And now it's just become more of a promoting Mexican cuisine, and I'm always looking for new dishes that surprise me. And I ask friends or family, have you heard this? Have you heard of this? And they're like, no. And I know that I have to share these things. I think what I really want to do with this content is surprise uh, foreigners. What I have been surprised by is that I'm followed by a lot of Mexicans who have never heard of the dishes that I share, a lot of dishes that I've shared. So that's wonderful because that really wasn't I was like, oh, Mexicans know this,
Yeah.
I should know this. But I also wasn't raised here. And so when actual Mexicans approach me, friends, they're like, man, I didn't know about that. That's wonderful. But really, I want to surprise foreigners so that they know when they come out, it's not just tacos. I mean, tacos are amazing, but even tacos, there are 100 different types of tacos,
Yeah.
and then the way that they're cooked, the meat, the protein, the vegan. I mean, there's a big vegan movement too. I mean, you might say, well, I don't want vegan tacos. There are vegan tacos 5 minutes from where I live, and they're amazing. Like I would go back for those any day,
Yeah.
So I think really what I want to do is just surprise foreigners with the diversity of food. I'm surprised myself. I mean, I thought I would do maybe 4 or 5 seasons. I feel like I could go on for years of like sharing Mexican food you've never heard of because, if I start traveling, which is really what I want to do when I start traveling to other states, um, I know I'm going to have content for days. There's one place that, I mean, everyone's heard of mole.
Right. Well, yes and no. Yeah.
Right? Yes and no. But there's this one restaurant in Tasco. I mean, obviously there are states that come to mind when you think of gastronomic eliteness. Oaxaca, Puebla, Mérida. Tasco is another place where I mean, I would never have imagined the level of gastronomy. There's this restaurant called Rosa Amaranto, and they make pink mole. Pink. And that's the traditional mole there in that city. And so I tried it. I didn't have big expectations. It was one of the most wonderful dishes I've ever had. And, obviously that mole, they make it with enchiladas, or you can have it with chicken, and just it's just so surprising to me. I feel like, every single time I record, I get excited, and I get excited when I know that this is a dish that, I've never heard of, which translates to most foreigners would never have heard of this. So, yeah, I think it's just promoting the gastronomy is where I'm at now, as opposed to just sharing what I ate when I started the channel.
When you initially went to Mexico, did you have any knowledge of Mexican food growing up in Australia, or did you have some knowledge of it? And then when you arrived, what was surprising to you?
Well, my mom and I, we would reminisce about things like pozole and pambazos and maybe tacos. And, there are these little cakes called gancitos, which we would have when we were kids. We would talk about that. Once I lived here, I mean, just the immense variety of dishes and street food and snacks, and it just blew my mind. There are so many stews and moles and soups, and it just was amazing to me. A lot of vegetarian dishes as well, because many of the dishes that people know outside of Mexico have a lot of meat, but there is an amazing variety of vegetarian dishes. When I like in my mid-30s, I was vegetarian for 5 years, and I was able to get by like eating delicious food, delicious vegetarian food. So I was absolutely surprised. Like I said, I came back. I've always been Mexican, but I came back looking at Mexico through the eyes of a foreigner because, I wasn't raised here, and just everything was amazing and tasted so good. And we don't have well, I think it's starting a bit, but the genetically modified food, it does affect the way that the food tastes here. When you travel to little towns, provincias, other states, the food just tastes completely different. I was in Michoacan, in a little city. It's not even a city, it's just a town. I mean, it's 4 blocks and that's it. It's called Agostitlan. And one of my good friends is from there, and she's like, you got to come and visit Agostitlan. It's beautiful. It's surrounded by pine trees and it's just wonderful. But, we went to the little town square, and there was this lady with a metate, and she was pounding corn to make masa for tortillas. And my friend had said, Sandy, you're going to love these tortillas. They're amazing. In the morning, they cut the corn from the fields and then they're pounding it, and, you'll have your quesadilla or tortilla. And I was like, yeah. I'm not a big tortilla person. I think I had about 12 tortillas every single day. I was there because the flavor was amazing. I was like, well, what do they put in this? And I at the most will have 4 or 5 tortillas if, I have a good stew or something, but 12, it was like, can I have some more? Oh, there's one left. I'll have that one too. And I remember I recorded the lady, and then I said, hey, can I have a go? Because, I was in my foreigner mode of, I can do that. And when I picked up the stone, I looked like an idiot because, the way that these ladies, the way that she pounded the corn, she had the wrist rolling action happening. Like, it was so smooth. When I got it, my hands just fell forward. It was just like, oh, I have no strength in my wrists to sustain this. Like, I couldn't pound crap of corn, And the food just tastes different outside of the city, and also because it's not genetically modified.
I love that. Thank you. I want to ask, you have a really wonderful platform to share some really great information about our perceptions, your perception of Mexico and how, people see it versus the reality of it. How do you perceive your use of your platform to share the rich cultural heritage of Mexico with people outside of Mexico and even beyond food?
Right. Well, first of all, I'm proud of my roots. I'm proud to be Mexican. And everywhere I go, I always put that forward. What throws people off is my Australian accent, but, I'm very much Chinese, Mexican, and Australian, So with all of these social media platforms that I have, really I'm showing just how proud I am of this country, of this, my focus is on food, on gastronomy. But everywhere I go, I always say that Mexico is such a beautiful country, in terms of, first of all, the people. Mexicans are so kind and noble, and they're hardworking, and they have a wicked sense of humor. I mean, anywhere you go all over the world, people are funny. But Mexicans are just, they're so witty. They'll have you killed over, laughing all day long. They are the biggest treasure that Mexico has, the people. And whenever a foreigner comes to this country, we always welcome everybody with arms wide open. That is how Mexicans are. And they're very festive and warm and family orientated. And then when you look beyond that, you look at obviously the richness of the gastronomy. You look at the richness of the geography and the diversity in the natural treasures that this country has. It's just amazing. So really what I do is always honoring this country. I mean, Mexico has, it gets beaten down so much. And I always tell my friends, because even Mexicans are like, oh, I don't know why you live in Mexico when you could be living in Australia. And I always say to anybody who's ignorant enough to ask me that, hey man, why don't you pick up your life and go live in another country and work and learn another language? And I tell you, you'll come back to Mexico and kiss the ground when you get off the plane. So because you're not valuing all of the treasures, all of the opportunities that you have in Mexico. And I know, I mean, I'm not completely ignorant to the fact of the sad things that happen in this country, all of the violence and everything that happens, the corruption, and that is heartbreaking, and that's a reality that we all live with. But I want to honor the beautiful parts. And there's a saying in Mexico, como Mexico no hay dos. So there's no other country like Mexico, and there's no other, there aren't other people like Mexicans, and that is not to devalue any other countries and, other people of other ethnicities. No, but Mexicans, como Mexico no hay dos.
No, it's very true.
Dean, can I ask you something?
Yes, please.
Do you have like some Mexican ethnic background, or
No.
what is your ethnic background?
So I am, so my brother did our genealogy, and we are the whitest people in the world. No, really, we're like, you really could not get, we actually thought we had maybe some Irish or German, and no, all from Britain, just completely Welsh, English, and some Scottish. So that's about as spicy as I get. But I grew up next to the border. And for me, the Mexican culture, not just the food, obviously, but like many aspects of the culture are very much normal for me, like something that I take great, I feel a lot of love for. And I feel a lot of, I just feel like a lot of, I think I feel like I'd like to go to Mexico. I want to travel there. I think I would find it to be probably much more like home than I think here would be. Although I love the Bay Area, I think I would be very at home in Mexico.
Wow. Well, that's something that you'll have pending for 2025.
Yeah, I think so. I really do want to travel down there. I've known some people, and I don't want to go. I mean, I know some people who go to the tourist spots, and I feel like you're kind of giving yourself what's the point? Like, if you're just going to go to the tourist spots and that's all you're going to see, you're not seeing a country. It's like coming to the United States and only going to Disneyland. It's like, well, okay, you're not really seeing anything. I mean, people come to the Bay Area and they just go to Fisherman's Wharf and they go home, and it's like, well, you didn't even see anything.
Oh, no. No,
Yeah.
I remember I was on tour in San Francisco with Juan Gabriel, and I've been maybe 3 times, and each time my best mate and I, Panchito, we would walk everywhere. I mean, I remember we walked like 10 hours, and we went to like I can't remember the names of the places, but the one spot is kind of more of like the artsy district.
Yeah, like MoMA.
Yeah, perhaps was that. Then we went to this funky food area, and then we walked all the way to the Golden Gate Park. And
Oh, nice.
we really felt like we had gotten a feel for the city because we walked everywhere. I mean, my feet were, I was dragging at some point my feet. But I think that's the best way to really get to know a city,
I mean, I've been to Chinatown like a million times, and it's always different every time. It's beautiful, and the city has so many beautiful parts of it, but they're kind of pricing it out and making it, I don't know, they're turning it into a theme park, I guess. I don't know. It's crazy. What happens? Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to San Diego?
Yes. I love it.
I love San Diego. I mean, I don't want to live there, but I like to visit. And Balboa Park is my heart. I love that. I love Balboa Park. It's like the best place.
Yeah. And you can get amazing Mexican food in San Diego.
Yeah,
Amazing
absolutely.
stuff. I have to precede that with I never have Mexican in the States, but if I were in San Diego or Bakersfield
Yeah.
or LA, some areas, I would have something and know that it's good.
We're kind of lucky in a way in the Bay Area. We have many different people from different regions cooking different Mexican food. So it's not a monolith, it's different types. And we also have a lot of fusion. We have a place like in Oakland, we have Senior Sisig, which is Filipino Mexican fusion, which is wonderful. We have a lot of really fun stuff like that. We have like Mexican Japanese fusion. We have a lot of neat, fun people playing with stuff. Or sometimes it's if they have different cultural heritage in their family, it's normal for them. They're just making something they eat at home. So it's kind of nice.
Yes, yes. And I think that's also something that Americans do great, which is like the fusion and really, you know, they're very innovative over
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Well, the Mexican people are, I mean, Mexican food is a lot of different innovation from different cultures. It's a real melting, like, I know people that are from Mexico City, but their grandmother came from Germany or, Denmark or wherever, Italy. And there's a lot of people that are from all over. And is there a lot of different types of food in Mexico City?
Uh, I think so. Like I have tried looking, in my case, I love Asian food. I grew up eating Vietnamese, Thai, obviously Chinese, and that is terrible here.
Oh,
I'll never eat it here. So my experience actually is that there aren't as many foreigners. Like I don't have friends who, don't really have friends who like you, the grandma or the mum is German. It's pretty much everyone's Mexican, the people that I
oh,
know. Um, but I don't know, that's just me and my circle. But in terms of getting authentic food from like other cultures, no, it's quite sad.
oh,
Like Italian, maybe.
yeah,
Italian's good here.
yeah,
But like what interests me is having good noodles, like a
yeah.
good Asian dish. Or, I ran out one day because I found out that a Vietnamese restaurant had opened up in La Condesa, which is a funky spot to go and eat. And it was terrible. It was terrible.
Oh,
It was expensive and I was mad.
oh no. Yeah, when I was in England, I would go to Mexican restaurants and be like, "This is the worst." Although I hear that's changing now. I mean, that was the '80s, so I think it's a lot different now.
No, no. It's like I was in Sydney in June and I saw this Mexican restaurant, air quotes. I didn't even try it. I just was like, nothing's going to beat what I'm going to come back to.
Oh. Well, Sandra, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I've loved getting a chance to talk to you. I will have links to your YouTube channels in the bio so people can look at that as well. And I want to recommend that and also recommend your content on Instagram, which I'll put a link to that as well. Sandra, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Dean. It's been my pleasure.
That was my conversation with Sandra Lau. That's all the time we have for on the Well-Seasoned Librarian podcast. We'll have more episodes dropping this week due to my catching up on the season's content. As an American and patriot, I'm dismayed and saddened by the detaining and deportation of Mexicans in our country. If you, like me, are outraged at this, you can help by donating to the National Immigrant Justice Center. I have links in the bio to find out more about how you can help the people in America who are being unjustly singled out and deported. I urge everyone to write their congressman and let them know how they feel about the injustices that are happening here in America. I support and stand by the Mexican people regardless of their citizenship status. We're all brothers and our countries have a strong bond. Scapegoating a portion of our population is wrong and has happened to many people. Let's not forget the detainment camps that housed the Japanese and Italians during World War II. Those that forget history are condemned to repeat it. Until next time, I'll see you at the library.